Welcome, bienvenidos. Welcome everyone to Profiles of Leadership. I have, as a student body president, today I have the great honor to introduce our speaker today. She don't need any special presentation because everybody in Utah know her. I just want to introduce and make the long story short. I would like to introduce our dear trustee, Gail Miller.
Like those kinds of introductions. How many of you are from Utah? Okay, so most of you. So you would know about our business. I'm not going to talk a lot about business today, but I do want to talk about what happened when we went into business and what we founded it on. Carlos asked me what my topic was, and I said values. I'm going to talk about the virtue of having values. There are a lot of people who are just in search of a pot at the end of the rainbow, a pot of gold, and they don't understand what it takes to get there. They think that going through life is just searching from one thing to another, but that's really not what happens in life. Too often, they fail to realize that success is not necessarily where you find it, it's where you make it. You have to be able to plan a course and work toward getting there. I really believe that once we take charge of our life, we can make good things happen for ourselves and for others around us if we do take charge. So I want to tell you a story about a young man who hadn't given much thought to who he was and what his potential in life was until he was challenged by this woman who gave him an opportunity to be introspective and to look at his own life. And this story is from a long time ago, so it's called the $5 job. There probably aren't any $5 jobs around anymore. So put yourself back in time, maybe into the 50s. It starts out with, no one in our Utah town knew where the Countess had come from. Her carefully precise English indicated that she wasn't a Native American. And from the size of her house and staff, we knew that she must be wealthy. But she never entertained, and she made it very clear that when she was at home, she was inaccessible. She always carried a cane, not just for support, but as a means of chastising any youngster that she thought needed to be disciplined. And at one time or another, all of the kids in our neighborhood seemed to display that need. But by running fast and staying alert, I had managed to keep out of her reach. One day when I was 13, I was shortcutting through her hedge. She got close enough to rap my head with her stick. "Ouch!" I yelled, jumping a couple of feet. "Young man, I want to talk to you." I expected a lecture on the evils of trespassing, but as she looked at me, half smiling, she seemed to change her mind. "Don't you live in the greenhouse down the street with the willow trees in it, in the yard?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you take care of your lawn? Water it, clip it, mow it?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. I've lost my gardener. Be at my house Thursday morning at 7, and don't tell me you have something else to do. I've seen you slouching around on Thursdays." When the Countess gave me an order, when it gave anyone an order, it was carried out. I didn't dare not come on that next Thursday. I went over the whole lawn 3 times with a mower before she was satisfied. And then she had me down on all fours looking for weeds until my knees were as green as the grass. She finally called me up to the porch. "Well, young man, how much do you want for your day's work?" "I don't know, 50 cents maybe." "Is that what you figure you're worth?" "Yes, ma'am, about that." "Very well, here's the 50 cents you say you're worth, and here's the $1.50 more that I've earned for you by pushing you. Now I'm going to tell you something about how you and I are going to work together. There are as many ways of mowing a lawn as there are people, and they may be worth anywhere from a penny to $5. Let's say a $3 job would be just what you've done today, except that you would do it all by yourself. A $4 job would be so perfect that you'd have to be something of a fool to spend that much time on a lawn. A $5 job is, well, it's impossible, so we'll forget about that. Now then, each week I'm going to pay you according to your own evaluation of your work. I left with my $2 feeling richer than I had remembered for a long time and determined that I would get $4 the next week. But I failed to reach even the $3 mark. My will began faltering the second time around her yard. $2 again, eh? That kind of job puts you right on the edge. I might even dismiss you, young man. Yes, ma'am, but I'll do better next week. And somehow I did. The last time around the lawn, I was exhausted, but I found I could spur myself on. In the exhilaration of that new feeling, I had no hesitation in asking the Countess for $3. Each Thursday for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I varied between a $3 and a $3.50 job. The more I became acquainted with her lawn, new places where the ground was a little high or a little low, places where it needed to be clipped short or left long on the edges to make a more satisfying curve along the garden, the more I became aware of just what a $4 lawn would consist of. And each week I would resolve to do just that kind of job. But by the time I'd made my $3 or $3.50 mark, I was too tired to remember ever having had the ambition to go beyond that point. Well, you look like a good, consistent $3.50 man, she would say as she handed me the money. I guess so, I would say, too happy at the sight of the money to remember that I had shot for something more. Well, don't feel too bad, she would comfort me. After all, there are only a handful of people in the world that could do a $4 job. And her words were a comfort at first, but then, without my noticing what was happening, her comfort became an irritant that made me resolve to do that $4 job even if it killed me. In the fever of my resolve, I could see myself expiring on her lawn, with the Countess leaning over me, handing me the $4 with a tear in her eye, begging my forgiveness for having thought I couldn't do it. It was in the middle of such a fever one Thursday night when I was trying to forget that day's defeat and get some sleep that the truth hit me. It hit me so hard I sat upright, half choking with my excitement. It was the $5 job I had to do, not the $4 job. I had to do the job that no one else could do because it was impossible. I was well acquainted with the difficulties ahead. I had the problem, for example, of doing something about the worm mounds in her lawn. The Countess might not have even noticed that they were there. They were so small. But in my bare feet, I knew they were there, and I had to do something about them. I could go on trimming the garden edges with shears, but I knew that a $5 job demanded that I line up each edge exactly with a yardstick and then trim it precisely with the edger. And there were other problems that only I and my bare feet knew about. I started the next Thursday by ironing out the worm mounds with a heavy roller. After about 2 hours of that, I was ready to give up for the day, 9 o'clock in the morning, and my will was already gone. It was only by accident that I discovered how to regain it. Sitting under a walnut tree for a few minutes after finishing the rolling, I fell asleep. When I woke minutes later, the lawn looked so good through my fresh eyes and felt so good under my feet that I was anxious to get on with the job. I followed this secret for the rest of the day, dozing for a few minutes every hour to regain my perspective and replenish my strength. Between naps, I mowed the lawn 4 times, 2 times lengthwise, 2 times across, until the lawn looked like green velvet checkerboard. Then I dug around every tree, crumbling the big clods and smoothing the soil with my hands. And then I finished with the edger, meticulously lining up each stroke so that the effect would be perfectly symmetrical. And I carefully trimmed the grass between the flagstones of the front walk. The shears wore my fingers raw, but the walk never looked better. Finally, at about 8 o'clock that evening, it was all completed. I was so proud I didn't even feel tired when I went up to her door. "Well, what is it today?" she asked. $5, I said, trying for a little calm and sophistication. $5? You mean $4, don't you? I told you the $5 job was impossible. Yes, it's possible. I just did it. Well, young man, the first $5 lawn job in history certainly deserves some looking around. We walked about the lawn together in the last light of evening, and even I was quite overcome by the possibility of what I had just done. "Young man," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder, "what on earth made you do such a crazy, wonderful thing?" I didn't know why, but even if I had, I could not have explained it in the excitement of hearing that I had done it. "I think I know," she continued, "how you felt when this idea first came to you of mowing a lawn that I told you was impossible. It made you very happy when it first came, then a little frightened. Am I right?" She could see she was right by the startled look on my face. "I know how you felt, because the same thing happens to almost everybody. They feel this sudden burst in them of wanting to do some great thing. Then they feel a wonderful happiness. But then it passes because they've said, 'No, I can't do that. It's impossible.' Whenever something in you says it's impossible, remember to take a careful look. See if it isn't really God asking you to grow an inch or a foot or a mile that you can come to a fuller life." Since that time, some 25 years ago, when I felt myself at an end with nothing before me, suddenly with the appearance of that word impossible, I've experienced again the unexpected lift, the leap inside me, and known that the only possible way through the very middle of that impossible is to go forward. Now, I tell you that that story because it's very applicable to mine and Larry's life. I met Larry when he was 12 years old. He was in 7th grade, as I was. We started dating in the 9th grade, and he was not motivated a lot by life. He was content to play and be involved in sports and not really having any direction in his life, and that went clear on up into high school. He graduated from high school with a 1.7 grade average. He went to college for 1 quarter until he realized he had a short attention span and poor study habits and dropped out. He didn't even withdraw, he just dropped out and quit going. So you say, well, what happened? How could he be so successful? I think what happened was in the time between the high school graduation and the time we got married, he realized that there was more to life than just having a good time or doing what you wanted, that you have to be directed to a place where you can make a difference in your own life and in the lives of people around you. After we got married, it took him a good 5 years to realize that he had to be the best at something, whatever he had decided it to be, that no one could deny him an opportunity to earn a good living, because we had 2 children by then, and he knew that they were permanent. They were not going to be going away, that he had to make a good living. So what we did when we started our own business in 1979, we decided that there had to be a base for it. What was going to be the base of our lives going forward? We bought 1 dealership in Murray, Utah, had 30 employees, and realized that whatever we were going to be, we wanted to be successful at. So we founded our business on a set of principles that we had determined were the principles that we wanted to live our life by. I call those principles values, and there is virtue in having values. At least once in our lifetime, each one of us will have an event that shapes our attitude and starts us on a course that we will either embrace or reject. That one event may make all the difference in how we approach each decision in our life from that point forward. And it may be consciously or it may be unconsciously. When I look back on my own life, there are a lot of events that help me shape who I am today, but there's one that stands out, and I was very young at the time. And it started with telling the truth. I was about 10 years old, and for some reason, I didn't think telling the truth was all that important. And I came from a large family. I was the sixth of 9 children. I had 4 older brothers and an older sister, and then a younger brother and a younger sister and another sister that passed away at birth. And I got into the habit, maybe because I needed attention, I don't know, of doing things that I shouldn't have and then lying about them. And it really wasn't any big deal to me. They weren't bad things, and they weren't big lies, but they were consistent. It was just the way I was going at the time. And the more I told a lie, the easier it became to tell the lie, and it got easier and easier. And they got bigger, and I got braver with each one that I told. Well, one day, I did something that I knew was very wrong, and as I later realized, it was very dangerous. But I didn't think anyone would ever know it was me if I denied it. So I did, and I didn't change the story. But I was somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. My older brother, had just gotten a new .22 rifle. And he was showing me how it worked in the backyard one day, and I thought, that's really neat. And he let me watch him take target practice. Shortly after that, I was home alone, and I thought, oh, that was so fun. I want to go shoot his gun. So we had an upstairs with a window that pointed out to the backyard, and we had 2 old sheds out there that used to be coal sheds. We lived in a home that the pioneers built, so it was a very old home in an old part of downtown, or old part of Salt Lake, and used to be heated by coal. So I went into his room, I took the gun, I loaded it with a .22 bullet, and I shot it out the back window at the shed, just like he had done. Well, when he got home, he saw that his gun had been tampered with, and for some reason, he came straight to me and asked me if I had done it. Of course, no, I didn't shoot your gun. Why would I do that? It's your gun. I wouldn't. And I stuck with my story no matter how hard he pushed me. He knew what I did. I knew what I did, but I denied it. And there was no way it could have been anyone else. So I just stood firm because I didn't want to be caught in that lie. I really felt at the time like I had gotten away with something. And it wasn't long before I learned a lesson that stayed with me the rest of my life. My conscience started to kick in, and I didn't feel good about what I'd done, but I didn't know what to do to overcome those feelings of guilt. My act had been dangerous. I had lied about it, and I had damaged a relationship that was very special to me, not just with my brother, but with my mother, who had gotten involved in that act and tried to get me to tell the truth. And she loved me more than anyone in the whole world, and I had lost her trust. She had become disappointed, and I had caused her a lot of hurt, all in that one act. She had spent her life and all her time and attention raising her children and teaching them correct principles and living what she taught us. So not only was she teaching us, she was an example of what she was teaching. She was a person of character and of values. Well, one day, not too long after the gun incident, I was listening to some of her friends talk about her. And they were talking about how honest she was and how they had never known her to tell a lie in her whole life. And that they could always count on her to be honest in conversation, in act, and deed. And I thought, wow, that's really a neat thing. And I'm sure it hit me, it had a big impact on me because I had just told this big lie in my life. And I thought, I am just the opposite of what she is. And I really did love her, and I admired her, and I didn't want to betray what she'd been teaching. And somehow I realized the importance of telling the truth at that time, and I vowed that I would never tell another lie. Now, I can't say that I never have, but I sure have tried to always tell the truth. And that was a turning point for me. That was one of those crossroads in my life, and I'm sure you've all had a crossroad of some kind that has made a difference in your life and changed maybe the direction you were going. And I don't know if I was successful right off the bat, but I really did try to start telling the truth. I wanted people to be able to say about me that I was an honest person. And I soon came to learn that telling the truth or being honest is the foundation of everything we do. If you can't be trusted, you have nothing. There are a lot of virtues that are closely connected to truth. And when you embrace the truth, they also affect who you are. Some of them are integrity, loyalty, kindness, consideration, authenticity, caring, commitment, compassion. It goes on, and you can name your own values. I'll bet a lot of those are values that you've picked up in your life, and if you haven't, I would recommend that you take a moment and think about your values and what you base your life on. What is important to you? I was older than you before I realized that the things I believed in really had names, and if I put the names down on paper, they became more important to me. And so I went through the exercise of saying, I am honest, I am truthful, I am loving, and I put all those things down on paper, and it helped to identify who I really was and what I wanted to add to it and become more of. Your values become a package as you practice living them. You become who they are. Let me give you the definition of a virtue, which is closely related to a value. It's a positive trait or quality deemed to be morally good and thus is valued as a foundation of principle and good moral being. Personal virtues are characteristics valued as promoting collective and individual greatness. Now, I can't believe that any of you are going to school to become mediocre. I think every one of you here has a goal, and you're going through the process of becoming educated so that you can become something, that you can become something great, not just get a graduation certificate that has your name on it. That's got to stand for something. It's the beginning of the rest of your life. In business, we found, as well as in our personal lives, that it's important to build your reputation on things that matter. You can't be worrying about what you say to who and whether you said the same thing to this person or that person. You have to always tell the truth so that it can stand up to scrutiny. That was one thing that was so important in our business dealings, was to be able to say, I am consistent. I always tell the truth. I don't have to worry about whether I said one thing to one person and one thing to another, and then years later wonder what I said to that person. If you always tell the truth, you never have to worry about that. Our virtue and our values should be the essence of our character. The more we practice them, the stronger they become, and they have to be cultivated and used in your daily life. With the habit of being more virtuous, we take charge of our own life, and we experience greater fulfillment and greater peace and greater joy. Trust me, it's true. When Benjamin Franklin was just 20 years old, he set out to cultivate his character by practicing 13 virtues, one each week for 13 weeks. And he created a small book to track his progress, and at the top of every page, he put a virtue, and he made 7 columns for each day of the week. At the top of the page, he wrote a short precept or a virtue that he wanted to practice and what it meant to him, not just the name, but what it meant to him to develop his character. And every evening, he would mark the day with a black spot if he had not accomplished the virtue that day. And his goal was to have the day clear of spots, telling him that the habit of that virtue had strengthened and its opposite weakened, so that whatever he was trying to build overcame the weakness in him. He believed that through the practice of virtues, he would become a better man, a happier and more successful person, which is true. And he used these virtues in his quest for moral perfection. I was talking with Carlos just before we started tonight about where the world is going today. And sometimes you have to consider that there's such a change, such a shift in the direction that people are going based on what they embrace to be true, that if we don't have our own moral compass, we can be caught up in the sweep of something that we don't really belong in. You have to be strong enough to know what you stand for and then stand for it. So in his autobiography, Benjamin Franklin devoted more pages to this plan than to any other point he references in his book. And he said, "I hope, therefore, that some of my descendants may follow the example and reap the benefit." I'm going to just shift a little bit right there, because in my company, once Larry passed away, I took over the obligation and the responsibility of making sure the things that we were built on don't get lost. And we are a family business, and my sons and my daughter are very involved in the business. And I have 34 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. And I have to start thinking about what is it that those grandchildren and those great-grandchildren are learning that will mesh with what I want to have happen. So in creating a plan for them for the future, I've included the value of virtues, and I want them to know what we stand for. So we've created a whole program within our company it's called Who We Are. And it teaches the values we were built on, not only to my family, but to the whole company. And we have increased, since Larry's been gone, from 5,000 employees to 11,000 employees. So many of those people never knew Larry and didn't know him personally and weren't affected by him in a one-on-one relationship. So it becomes our responsibility to maintain the foundation that we were built on and help others to know what it stands for. You don't really know at this point in your life how far-reaching your effect is going to be, but it will be far-reaching, not just in your family, but with everybody you come in contact. You will exude what you stand for. And if you know what you stand for, that's even better. Don't let it just happen. You have to be able to name it and own it and live it. So in that way, virtues have played a major role in my life all along the way. I told you about my first encounter with realizing how important it was to tell the truth, and that was a turning point for me. And there have been lots of other lessons along the way. I could tell you just a quick overview of how my husband and I got here, but I'm afraid I may not have time, so I'm going to leave that part for questions if you have questions. Larry and I were married for 44 years, and during that time we built our company from one dealership to 80 companies, and from 30 employees to over 11,000, or just about 11,000 today. That's a lot of people that are affected by who and what we are. If you consider each employee as a family of 2, that's 22,000. If they're a family of 3, it's 33,000. So that's how you can affect a lot of people. I had to realize after Larry left what I was going to do with my life. How was I going to be involved in the business, and how was I going to continue the legacy that we had built and build for the future and keep the family together and unified. And those were the things that I came up with, is creating this plan to teach people who we are. And we now are going through a process of transition and succession so that the family can learn what we stand for and how we got to where we are. It is, believe it or not, it doesn't happen by osmosis. You have to consciously teach things. I have since remarried, and what made it possible for me to embrace another marriage was that I knew who I was and I knew what I stood for, and I could recognize it in another person, and we had common values. And one of those things is living life on purpose. The benefits of knowing what you stand for are that you can join goodness with goodness and have common goals with other people. We have a conference every year that we take all of our managers to, which is about, we take their spouses as well. So we take about 270 people to a retreat every year, and we teach them with the hope that it will filter down through the company, the things that we stand for. I want to go through now some of the things that that I think are really important that you should look at in your own lives. First, you need to ask, what virtue have I practiced that led to success in my own life or made a difference for someone else? And how did living that virtue or those values help you create what you want to create? Everything we did, everything we were, and everything we did came from inside of us, the conviction that we could be and do something extraordinary because we were willing and able to recognize what was important to us and put those things into action. Preparation for life has to be deliberate, or you just get what's left. There are other people who are preparing to take the best spots. You can have those spots in life. You can prepare yourself so that you have the cream of the crop. But if you don't prepare yourself, someone else is going to get that, and you're going to be left with what's left over. So live your life on purpose. Live it according to what you know to be true. If you search your heart and your soul to identify your virtues and then name them out loud and take the time to do that, then you own them and you can use them to your advantage to do good things, to have a joyful life, to make other people's lives joyful, to raise your family, to be successful in business, to have a choice relationship with your spouse if you're married, to love your fellow man, to have peace of mind, and to create happiness. We can know if we're becoming more virtuous by the way other people respond to us. If our families, our friends, our coworkers, and our neighbors trust us and rely on us, then we know that they recognize what's good in us. They can come to us for guidance and for help, and they'll want to be around you because you inspire them to be better people. If you do these things, you will be known as people with exceptional character who make the right choices and strive for excellence in all you do. Could life be any better than that? I think that's a reward in itself. The practice of virtues allows us to develop our potential and live a more purposeful, better life, not an ordinary life, but an extraordinary life. Becoming more virtuous attracts people to us and attracts greater things to us. It's a certainty. The best thing to give your enemy is forgiveness. To an opponent, tolerance. To a friend, your heart. To a child, your good example. To a father, deference. To your mother, conduct that will make her proud of you. To yourself, respect. And to all men, charity. That's a quote by Benjamin Franklin. Now, I've talked a lot about a core set of values today. Some of those things that I think it's important to ask yourself are, am I honest? Do I show up? Do I show up on time? Do I believe in carrying my share of the load? Do I willingly help where I can help? And do I look for ways to help Do I treat other people with respect? With regard to goals, have you taken the time to set personal goals? Do you know where you want to go and how you're going to get there? Have you set realistic goals for a job? A goal without a plan is just a wish. Another personal area of excellence is health. For some of you, I imagine, are married. Do you understand that others depend on you? Even if you're not married, there are other people that depend on you. Do you take care of your health by eating right, by exercising, and getting enough sleep? I know when you're at school, it's easy to burn the candle at both ends. But if you don't take care of your health, it won't take care of you. And I know that through having watched Larry go through his health problems. He gave his life to other people because he wanted to do so many good things that he neglected himself, and in the end lost his life and the ability to continue helping other people. So good health is a very important part of life. Do you minimize the stress in your life, and do you have regular checkups? And being happy is a healthy thing. Make sure you have happiness in your life. And then we can talk about relationships. Do you give the people in your life enough of yourself or your attention? Or do you bring your problems home? And if you do the people you come home to look forward to seeing you with your problems? I think that that's part of the stress you deal with, is carrying your burdens from one area of your life to another. I think it's important. Do you cultivate meaningful relationships? If you have children, do they like being with you? Do you like being with your children? And I'm sure that you can fill in other areas in relationships, but you can do that for yourself. You know what's important to you. In work habits, does personal excellence show up in your work habits? That's how you get raises and promotions, is to have personal excellence. Are you a responsible person in the workplace? Do you carry your load and then some? Are you a person of integrity as you represent your company? Do you speak positively about what you do? And then there's your family. If you are married, does your spouse know that he or she is the most important person in your life? Or even your boyfriend or girlfriend if you're serious? Do you know the activities that your children are involved in? You can tell from these that I had some difficulty with these things. Larry worked so much that my children really didn't know him for a long time. Do you spend meaningful time together with your family? I know one of my children was asked in school what his father did, and he said, "Oh, he sits at a desk and talks on the phone all day." He didn't really know what Larry did because he didn't know what he did for a living. And do they care what you do? Having a good attitude is really important. Are you someone that people enjoy being around, or are you a bore? Do you see the jar half full or half empty? Do people avoid you, or do they like to be around you? Those are things you can control. What lens do you look through every day? Do you need to change that lens? Do you need to become more positive? It's just as easy to be positive as it is to be negative. You can even say negative things in a positive way if you practice. And are you an influence for good for those around you? I want to tell you, since I have a little time, I want to tell you a story of a friend of mine who was at 22. She was on a date with a friend, and they went down to southern Utah, and they were playing in the red rocks of the canyon, jumping from boulder to boulder. And down there, it became dusk, and it was hard to tell the layers of the rocks. And she was called and said, "Let's go." And she said, "Just one more jump." And as she jumped off a 30-foot cliff. And she landed on her hands and knees, and she broke her back and her wrists and her legs and became a quadriplegic at 22. She had been a dancer. Her life had been programmed in her mind that she was going to be a successful performer. So they took her to the hospital, and when she got the news that she would never walk again, she laid in the hospital bed with tears just streaming and filling her ears, and the pillow was soaked. And she just sobbed, and then in a moment she realized, I can't live my life in sorrow. I have to find one thing to be thankful for. So she looked around the room and she saw the light switch, and she said, I'm thankful for the light switch that turns the light on. And then she saw the window and said, I'm thankful for the light that comes through the window. I'm thankful for the nurse. I'm thankful for the bed that I'm in. I'm thankful for the help that I'm getting. And she named every single thing she could think of. And that helped her through that ordeal. But when she was healed enough to go home and knew that she would live the rest of her life in a wheelchair, she said, what do I do now? There aren't a lot of things that you can do in a wheelchair. There are a lot of things for men to do because they can play basketball and they can do bicycle races and they can do all kinds of things, but those weren't things that she felt she could do. And she was a beautiful girl. And finally she thought she had heard about a Miss Wheelchair contest. She said, I can join the contest. I can go for a Miss Utah Wheelchair. And so she tried to find out where to do that, and there wasn't a place in Utah to join that contest. So she called Miss Wheelchair USA, and she said, I'd like to be in your Miss Wheelchair pageant. And they said, well, where do you live? I'm from Utah. Oh, well, you can't because there's nobody in Utah that you can represent. So she went back to her home, and she said, I'm going to organize a Miss Utah Wheelchair pageant. And she did that. As soon as she organized it, she called back the national and she said, I'm in. And she won, and she came back to Utah and got other young women involved in that. And one year she asked me to judge the pageant for her with some other judges. One of the most greatest experiences I've had is to see these young women of all degrees of handicap enjoy doing something that made them feel good. This is a woman that didn't just sit on her laurels or sit and feel sorry for herself. She found a way to be positive and bring joy to other people. So no matter what your circumstances are, you can always do something to lift other people. And it's a much better way of living than to say, oh, woe is me. I've got a test next week and I'm not doing well in this class. Take charge of your life and change the things you don't like about it. Let's talk now about being a good citizen. Do you even know, of course you know today, who the political leaders are? Are you aware of the issues that affect your life and your city and your county? Big question, do you vote? Do you encourage others to vote? Do you appreciate and protect the freedoms that you enjoy? And if you have the chance, do you fly the flag? I have a flagpole in my front yard. I fly the United States flag, the Utah flag, and the Jazz flag. Do you organize your life so that you have balance in it? Because all work and no play makes for a dull person. You can't just do school all the time, and you can't do school and work all the time. You have to have some time for recreation and refilling your bucket, and that will help you become more positive. Now let's talk about your influence. Do you use your talents to be influential in showing other people what they can do? And do you live your life in such a way that others want to know what you're up to? What is it that makes you tick? Why are you so happy? Why are you so successful? And do you look for ways to make a difference in your circles? Are you willing to share what you know with other people? Let me tell you, that's a really important thing. You're going to spend your life learning. It's not going to end when you graduate. It's not going to end when you go to graduate school. You're going to continue working learning your whole life. I didn't go to college either. And I feel like the world has been my university, and I have learned in every situation that I've been in, and I've brought something from that situation to help me to be successful. Do I know others in the workplace when I have an opportunity to be a teacher that I can teach? Or do I just keep it all to myself? Don't do that. Teach what you know. There's always somebody that can benefit. You don't have to be a know-it-all, but don't keep what you know just to yourself. In other words, you can be a role model and a leader. The world needs leaders, not just managers, but leaders. What's the difference? A leader is a person who knows where they're going and they take people with them. A manager is someone who just takes care of a situation and doesn't let it get out of hand. You can be a manager but without being a leader, but you cannot be a leader without being a manager. There was a General Clark, who was an officer in the World War II, who said, "All nations seek it constantly because it's the key to greatness, sometimes to survival, the electric and the elusive quality known as leadership." Where does juvenile delinquency begin? In leaderless families. Where do slums fester? In leaderless cities. Which armies falter? Which political parties fail? Poorly led ones. Contrary to the old saying that leaders are born, not made, the art of leading can be taught and it can be mastered. Seek to be a leader. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of qualities that I haven't included in this talk today that probably should be here, but at least this is a start to make you thinking about and get you thinking about what you want your life to be like, what you want to concentrate on. You will know better than I do what it is that you need to perfect your life, and you can increase your personal excellence a little bit every single day. We all can. But we can't do it all at once. So just start somewhere. Work on one thing at a time. Before you know it, your life will be better. You'll be happier, and those around you will respond to you in a different way. I want you to know that I am personally thankful for all of the youth that go to college that are bright and exceptionally interested in making the world a better place. You will make a difference. We need leaders today. We need people of moral courage who have values, who live their values, and don't let someone of valueless life or someone who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk influence you. If you want to become the leaders, do it. Do it now. Make the world a better place. There are lots of people who would be willing to help you. You're not going through school alone. You have teachers and mentors and counselors who are there to help you, who will give you advice and encouragement and help. So don't let yourself get down. Keep a positive attitude. Know where you can go for help and help others when you can. Leaders don't happen by accident. They prepare themselves for the role. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have had. It's one that I never ever believed that I would have, and that is of leading in my own company. I was a stay-at-home mom for 44 years. I raised kids for 44 years, my own and a grandson, which spread it out another 12 years. And then when Larry died, I had the opportunity to continue the legacy that we started. And I found myself being the leader in our company. Now, it wasn't something that I chose to do. It was something that I needed to do because I had the conviction that what we were doing was right, and I didn't want to let it go by the wayside. And it's been a very exciting, exhilarating opportunity. I've seen a lot of the other side of life that I didn't experience as I was raising children. I did have the opportunity to learn from Larry as he was growing the business. He would share with me. It's one of those teach other people what you know. He would come home and share with me what he was doing and how he was doing it and what the future looked like and how he was going to get there. So I wasn't totally unprepared to lead the company, but it was a world I was not comfortable in. I have learned to become comfortable in it. What I have learned, and probably the most important, there are two things. One is, don't be afraid to step into territory you're unfamiliar with. Fear is a limiter. It's a limiting factor in your life. Don't be afraid. You can make a difference. And the other one is that if you have an opportunity to make a difference, you also have an obligation to make a difference. And have the faith in yourself that you can do it. Don't be afraid and take the opportunity. You can all do great things. You can all make a difference in this world. Choose wisely, work hard, and make a difference. Now, I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask questions if any of you have questions. Thank you. Yes.
Obviously, starting businesses is a hard thing to do. What gave you the motivation to keep going as kind of hard things came into play as you were starting businesses?
We originally, okay. He asked the question, what motivated us to go into business and to stay in business when hard things manifest themselves? We didn't plan to go in business for ourselves. We worked for a man who had 8 sons, and Larry he worked in the parts department of a Toyota store. He was promoted to be the manager, and then he was promoted to be the operations manager over 5 stores. And each time he got a promotion, he got a raise. But we kept the raise in an account and we didn't spend it. We didn't change our lifestyle. So we had money to invest, and we invested it in land. And then the man who owned the business brought his sons in to those 5 stores. He had 8 of them, I think I said that. And when that happened, he asked Larry to come and teach them. But Larry realized that with all those sons coming in, it was not going to be a career path that he could stay in. And so we started looking for our own company. We had $88,000 that we could invest in our own company. So the principle here is don't live beyond your means, prepare for the future, and take an opportunity when it arises, or make an opportunity happen. We happened to come to Salt Lake on a vacation, and Larry knew a man that owned a Toyota store and said to him, when are you going to sell me your store? And he said, how about today? Well, he had said no many times before, but that day he said, how about today? We were ready and prepared to be able to step into that role. Now, it wasn't smooth sailing right from the beginning, because owning your own company is very different than working for someone. And being able to pay the payroll, you have to sell enough cars to pay the payroll. And there were times when he would come home and say, I don't have money to pay us because I have to make payroll for the employees. So we just put our heads down and determined that we would do the very best we could do, and based our life on our values, what we knew was right. And then as opportunities came along, by living what we believed in and having integrity and being known for being people of our word and doing business the way it should be done, others would call when a dealership became available. They'd say, would you be interested in buying my dealership? Because people who sell a dealership generally want to know it's going to someone that will take care of it and will take care of their people. So it opened doors for us by living our values and getting a reputation that we would be good business people and take care of whatever was under our umbrella. Does that answer your question?
You talked a lot about honesty with your values and virtues. What are some other values and virtues you apply in your daily life and in your company?
I can tell you the 4 values that we based our Who We Are program on. They are integrity, hard work, service, and stewardship. Hard work, because it is hard work, no matter how you look at it. It's hard work to do something and do it well. Integrity is how you get get people to believe in you if you're a person of integrity and want to do business with you. Stewardship came into play because we believe that what we have is something we're responsible to do good things with, not just ours to have. We have an obligation to treat it as a vehicle to do good things. So that's the stewardship. And then service is something we believe very strongly in, and giving back. You have to give back. In fact, I don't know how many of you're young, but in 2008 there was the economy tanked, and Larry was very ill at the time, and our son had taken over the company as the CEO. And when the economy went down so low, Greg started to cut back, and he cut back on inventory, he cut back on costs of everything, and tried to contain the cost of running the business. And I said to him, I agree that you have to do that, but the one thing we can't stop is serving. We have to continue to do good wherever we can, and some of that is by doing philanthropy. Because to me, I know that by doing good, we get blessings. And that helped me I believe that we do well because we do it right and we share what we have. And so I was not about to stop doing that. I think that answered your question. I get carried away, so if I don't answer it, ask it again. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, Gail. First off, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being a business owner, very busy, and transitioning from a full-time mom to a business owner, how do you make time now for family, for exercise? You kind of explained a little, but I guess how do you make that time now that you're full-time business?
Well, you have to have priorities. My kids are all grown now with 34 grandchildren, and I want to have relationships with my grandchildren. It does become difficult just from the sheer numbers and from the time it takes to do that. But I do make sure that we have time every month to all get together. We take one Sunday a month and say we're all going to meet at Grandma's house, so we're going to talk. And then I do have the opportunity to see my kids at work every day, so that's good. But the daughters-in-law and the son-in-law kind of have to make extra time for that. So you just have to prioritize. You have to decide what is most valuable to you. And people talk about balance in life. There really isn't any such thing as balance in life. You can't divide things equally. You have to spend the time it takes to do the things you have to do. But you have to be aware that there will be a time when you'll have some space. Take it to do the things that you have been putting on hold so that you don't miss out. Because they grow up fast.
How has the success of the company impacted your life, and how much time does it consume of your day?
It consumes all day, every day. I work full time, and I think it's impacted all of our lives in a very interesting way. In fact, when we bought the Utah Jazz, Larry was very concerned about how it would affect our family and our life, and he went to a respected businessman for advice, and he said there are three things you need to understand. Number one, if you buy the Utah Jazz, well, first of all, you have to understand that you can't put your family at jeopardy. You can't put your businesses at jeopardy. You have to be able to do this and keep financially stable. So you don't want to do something that's going to cause your other businesses to fail. And we were able to do that. He said the other thing you need to understand is that once you do that, you will be living life in a fishbowl. Are you ready for that? Well, who knows if you're ready for that, because it's very different. People want to know what you're about and what you look like. I remember shortly after we bought the Jazz, there was a newspaper man that wanted to come and do an interview. And I'm just a normal person. I wear sweats at home, and I don't always comb my hair. And anyway, he came to do the interview, and I had a little hole in the leg of my pants. And he noted that. He said, "She doesn't put on airs." Well, I like to think I'm not any different in any part of my life. I am who I am because of the values I live by. And that's a really important thing for you to all think about. You can't be one way here and another way here, because it'll catch up with you. It's that, what did I tell them and how did I act here? You have to be consistent. So it's affected me in a way that I want to be real. I don't want to put on airs. I very consciously tried to be the same person all the time. I have been very poor. I grew up very, very poor. A lot of times we didn't know where our next food was coming from. And I've been very, very rich. But I'm not a different person. I'm the same person either way, because I want to be who I am inside, not what people judge me to be. So I think that answers your question.
I just had to ask, what's the most rewarding thing about running the business the way you've run it?
The most important thing about the business, what?
Rewarding. So what's
The most rewarding thing? It's being able to enrich lives. That is very rewarding. In fact, before Larry died, we were talking about our purpose and what it was all about. And he said, I think the thing that we have to remember is that if we can go about doing good until there's too much good in the world, we will have accomplished something great. Well, that's an impossible goal, but it's a lot of fun trying. And if we can make a difference for people, and we do a lot of philanthropy, but we do a lot of service too, and we try to do things where we see there's a need, not just outside the business, but inside the business. If we have employees who get into trouble financially for medical reasons or something beyond their control, then we try to help them. So those are the things that are rewarding, is being able to help people and enrich lives. There's really nothing like that. Okay, thank you very much.